W.E.B. Du Bois was the first to say there are psychological benefits of whiteness, right? It's not only that you get access to certain benefits, but you also get the benefit of feeling superior to people of color. um, and that makes it easier to get white people scared that something's being taken away from them, when it's not really that something's being taken away from them so much as their sense of superiority is being challenged.
Get your hands up, stand up. Detroit, New York, stand up. LA, Atlanta, stand up. Nigeria, Ghana, stand up. South Africa, Haiti, stand up.
Okay, good day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. The first interview of an author. His name is Paul Kivel. Paul Kivel is an educator. He's an activist. He's an author that's written several books. The one that we will be focusing today on is Uprooting Racism. And this man has dedicated his life to social justice and racial equality. And his book, Uprooting Racism, actually focuses on teaching white people to fight for social justice and to also recognize prejudice and racism and systemic racism and ways for them to work towards ending racism. So it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce Mr. Paul Kivel, who's joining us today from California. He is a proud grandfather, and I'm just so happy that you're joining us today, Mr. Kivel.
Thank you. It's great to be with you, and I'm always glad to be part of the conversation.
Your book explicitly and in just such fine detail talked about how there has been basically affirmative action for white men for years. You know, and I never looked at it that way. I never looked at it as affirmative action for white men because it didn't say it was affirmative action, but that's exactly what it was. Doors were closed for everybody else, and only, you know, white men were allowed to get loans, to buy houses, to buy land, and so on and so forth. Just for our audience who haven't read your book yet, Uprooting Racism, can you please talk a little bit about that?
I think that's an important part of the conversation. And I really realized this more deeply when I thought about my own family history and the ways that my family, starting with my grandfather and father, had benefited from the fact that women and all people of color had been eliminated from the competition to get into college and to get loans to buy a house, or even shown houses in certain neighborhoods. That the jobs that they had were white only jobs. They competed against other white men to get hired, but they didn't. No people of color and no women could apply, or would be accepted. So that my current privileges, benefits from this system, are the result of a long line of affirmative action for the white men in my family history, and therefore for the women and children that followed, that tagged onto the coattails of that white male privilege, right? And so that's been always invisible because it wasn't talked about, it wasn't named. Of course, women and people of color saw it happening and tried to name it, or they tried to assimilate and be accepted and be more like white men. That was another strategy, right? But it only became affirmative action when it started to be available to open up avenues of entry for people of color and for white women in particular. So when we say that you're against affirmative action, when people say that, what they're really saying is they're against equal access for those who have been excluded in the past.
Why do you think people are so against that now? When they've basically had like a 500-year lead, and now minorities are given the same basically privileges to be able to prove themselves, to have the opportunity to work at these jobs that they were excluded from, and go in and perform and prove themselves. Why are people so against that now?
I think it's because it's been spun by the ruling class in our country and elsewhere that white men are being harmed that white men are losing out on job opportunities, that white men have a lot to lose if other people have equal opportunity. And so there is this socialized fear and created fear that equal opportunity will mean that I am left out in some way and disadvantaged. It's also been portrayed as people are hired who aren't qualified, but that's a complete misunderstanding of affirmative action. It doesn't say that you hire unqualified people. It just means that everybody has equal opportunity to apply and to be accepted. But the way it's been framed in the media is that people are unqualified and getting into positions that qualify white men, of course, because white men are always qualified by definition, should have. So I think there's various ways that it's been framed by those in power to make it seem like this is very threatening to white men. And there's a lot of white men who aren't succeeding in our society because things are stacked against them, because they're poor or working class or middle class and don't have the same advantages. And so it's easier to find a scapegoat for that than it is to say, wait a second, the whole system, why am I turning against somebody who's applying for the same job with me when it's the owners of the factories and the government officials who are the ones that are pitting us against each other? And so we have to step back and say, it's not just about you and me competing, it's about who's putting us in competition with each other.
The systems that have been in place to oppress people of color, especially in the United States, have also oppressed lower income whites. And what it has done is they've made even though the lower income whites are also being exploited, they make them feel that, you know, even though you're disenfranchised and you don't have anything, at least you're not Black. When all of us are being equally exploited, and we're not doing anything about it because somehow one group is being made to feel like it's okay. Don't fight the status quo, because as long as you believe that you're white and that makes you somehow better, then it's okay. Can you kind of explain it a little bit better?
Yeah, it's I think W.E.B. Du Bois was the first to say there are psychological benefits of whiteness, right? It's not only that you get access to certain benefits, but you also get the benefit of feeling superior to people of color. And that makes it easier to get white people scared that something's being taken away from them, when it's not really that something's being taken away from them so much as their sense of superiority is being challenged. So then it becomes easier for ruling elites to say, well, it's really immigrants of color, or it's really Black people, or it's really indigenous people who are the threat to you. We're on your side, even though we're exploiting you every day. But they are the real threat because they're going to take away this superior standing. They're going to make you feel like you're not just special just because you're white. So yeah, it's a lot of it is the manipulation that happens around whiteness, around racism.
Examples of ways in which like lower income whites are also exploited, just like people of color?
I think the clearest example is just economically. When white people aren't bonding with people of color to organize into unions or organize for higher wages or better conditions in the workplace because they feel like they're in competition with people of color, then wages stay low. We can see that in this country. There's 40% of the population in the United States is poor. That's 140 million people in the United States. Well, a lot of those people are white, but they're reluctant often to support the struggles of people of color because they feel like they're threatened by it and not looking at who's making the decisions to pay people less, to exploit people, to move factories overseas, to set up dangerous working conditions and pollution in the communities.
Thank you for watching. Please share, subscribe, and support this channel so we can continue to provide programs such as this.